back to, if I'm interested in buying land and stuff like that, obviously there's not traditional necessarily mortgages, and I'm not trying to necessarily speak to specifics about that, but if there was a client, what would you be educating me on and how that's different between the rural kind of, what do they call that? Rural loans for rural land kind of a thing.
Or something like the USDA loans and stuff?
Yeah. Those types of things, specifically for farm.
So money works in a lot of different ways when it comes to land.
Raw land, I guess, is really what it's
so if you're buying a farm, a legitimate farm, if farming is going to be your business, there are USDA programs, much like there's a USDA rural housing loan. USDA rural housing loan works all over the country. There are places such as Lexington that don't qualify for that rural area as seen by the government, but it's a government guaranteed loan, just like the VA, just like the FHA. That's just for houses. There are USDA loans for farms for when you are actually farming a piece of ground for a money-making purpose and whatever. And so you can get a loan like that. Again, that's something where you've then registered for, a farm ID, and you have a business plan, or you already have a history farming. If you're buying raw land,
almost like a business as far as the way that's
100% like a business, 100%. Then there are land loans, which will vary for most lenders, where you might even have an acreage limit, and it's probably going to be a balloon loan. So you're going to put 30, 35, maybe even 40% down. You're going to have a 10-year term, 7 to 12, whatever. But let's call it 10. And you'll pay interest only. And then at the end of that 7 to 10 or 12, your entire principal is due. Now, you can overpay during that time or whatever, but that's how most land lending works around here, with the exception of 2 lenders. Can I give a shout out of the 2 lenders? Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, so there's my favorite, Rural First. Rural First is an arm of the Farm Credit Mid-America. So many words. And so they lend money for land the way that people lend money for houses in a conventional way. So you can put 10% down, 15% down, or 20% down for a fixed rate for 10, 15, or 20 years, respectively, which is pretty incredible. It's very much unheard of. Landline lending does a similar thing. They have $100,000 minimum, though. They have a little bit lower of a credit requirement from a score perspective, whereas Rural First, last I checked, because a lot of this fluctuates just given interest rates and the Fed and whatever. But Rural First, there's no minimum, but you do have to have a credit score minimum of 720 in order to take advantage of that 10, 15, or 20% down with a 10, 15, or 20-year term. So a lot of people, depending on the amount of land and their budget, a lot of people buy cash. I mean, that's a very common thing to do, because in some manners of speaking, you might spend $60,000, and that $60,000 may be, a down payment for another house. So sometimes people have that kind of cash lying around. When you start talking about $300,000 and $400,000 and $600,000 properties, most people are looking for some type of loan, especially if they're first-time land owners. They're usually borrowing money to make that happen.
Because I know for me, what I'm interested in, there's kind of the idea with the banks and those conversations with the banks where acquiring the land in a separate transactions from what I wanted to do / develop on the land would need to kind of be into. It seemed like it was much easier to be done and from 2 separate things. Acquire the land first, then work with the banks on kind of
that's usually my professional guidance for anyone, even when they want to build something. They're like, well, I want to get a construction loan. I'm like, well, are you really ready for that? Because in a construction loan, you need home plans. You need to know everything that's going to go into that house. You need to know who's going to build it, know if your lender is going to allow that person to build it and feels that they're not a risky person or risky business, or that they are insured and all that kind of stuff. It's much easier to get the land, maybe even pay on it for a couple of years and use that land then as leverage for your construction loan. Because a lot of times no one wants to really rush through the process of home design, choosing an architect. And most people, frankly, are not prepared for the amount of work that happens. So I usually suggest, hey, find where you want to build the house. You can think about how that house needs to look later. But if you are trying to do all of this stuff at once, you're likely to be overwhelmed and you're likely to be underprepared for how many things you actually need to have ready for a lender to say, yes, we will give you money for this loan and to build this house. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be a smooth process for you, especially if you've never built the house.
Yeah, 100%.